A lot of questions coming up about the resurrection.
Good.
What are we to make of the Christian tenet that a transcendent and omnipotent God became flesh, became a human being in the person of Jesus? If we believe in the transcendence and omnipotence of God, then the resurrection, a return to transcendence, which we might call God's natural state, should not be surprising. What should challenge us, what should challenge us is the belief that God descended to the status of humanity at all. Would you agree with this observation? Does it have any value? It's the coming down, not so much the going back.
Well, I think that there's a point that he's making, but I think on the other hand, this student, the question embodies a profound misunderstanding of the doctrine of the Incarnation. The doctrine of the Incarnation is not the doctrine that God somehow turned himself into a human being. That notion is much more akin to the metamorphoses of Greek pagan mythology, where Zeus turns himself into a swan or turns himself into a bull or some such thing. The Christian doctrine of the Incarnation is not that God turned himself into a human being and thereby ceased to be God. Rather, it is that in addition to his divine nature that he has had from eternity, the second person of the Trinity took on an additional nature, namely a human nature, so that Christ had two natures, human and divine, so that he was both fully human or truly human and truly divine. It wasn't a kind of metamorphosis of one into the other. He was truly human and truly divine simultaneously. And the resurrection and ascension do not represent the abandonment of his human nature. On the contrary, the doctrine of the resurrection is the most startling and remarkable affirmation of the value of the human body that I think I can possibly imagine. It says that the Incarnation was not merely a temporary status that the second person of the Trinity assumed for 30 years here on earth and then sloughed off. Rather, in the resurrection and ascension, Christ takes his human nature into eternity. So this is a tremendous affirmation of the value of materiality, of corporeality, and of humanity, that the second person of the Trinity is permanently incarnated in a human nature. So we mustn't think of the resurrection and ascension as a return to this blissful state of pure divinity, as though his human nature is no longer valuable and is sloughed off and left behind. Having said that, however, I think the student is certainly right in emphasizing that the act of taking on our humanity is an incredible act of condescension on God's part, that he would leave the glory and majesty that he enjoyed with God the Father and stoop so low as to take on our humanity and experience the fatigue and the sufferings and the anxiety and finally death itself that our human nature is prone to, thus fully identifying with our humanity. So this is an amazing God that we Christians worship, one who humbles himself and condescends to take on this form of a servant in this remarkable way.
Thank you.